Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to get started. Thank you for joining us. So this is a Global Investigative Journalism Network webinar, and today we are talking about investigative journalism and digital threats in the 2024 elections. I'm your moderator. My name is Craig Silverman. I'm a reporter with ProPublica, and I do a lot of work covering disinformation and other related topics. I'm also one of the instructors for GIGN's Digital Threats training sessions, which we are accepting applications for. So if you want to learn more about that, take a look at the GIJN website. So the topic of this webinar is very timely because during this year, thousands of journalists from all over the world have been and will be reporting on and investigating the impact of growing digital threats like disinformation, spyware, trolling, digital violence happening in elections all over the world. And so we're here to share ideas, strategies, and techniques for investigation, which is particularly critical given that there are more than 60 countries having elections this year, which is pretty unprecedented. So in this webinar, we have leading journalists and experts who will share tips and tools about how to better expose the individuals and organizations behind disinformation campaigns. I'm going to introduce today's speakers. But again, just to note, GIGN has a digital threats training program. It is free, you can apply, and it is open right now for applications. This is our third group of fellows that we will welcome from around the world, and you have until March 24th in order to apply. So we're going to put the link to do that into the chat box, so have a look for that. And we will continue on by introducing today's speakers. So I'm going to introduce them in the order that they will be speaking. Each of our presenters will have about 10 minutes to kind of take you through some examples, some case studies, some tools, and then we will have some discussion, and we will also open things up for questions at the end. Our first speaker will be Priyanjana Bengani, who is the Tao Computational Journalism Fellow at Columbia University's Tao Center for Digital Journalism. Her work focuses on using computational techniques to research the digital media landscape. This includes partisan local news and the intersection of platform companies with the media. Second, we have Malik Hadrawi. He is a journalist, trainer, and publication director of Intifada, a Tunisian magazine dedicated to investigative and long-form journalism. He's also the executive director of Al-Khat, a nonprofit organization that supports independent journalism and provides solutions for creating impactful journalistic content. He's also a consultant for several national and international organizations working in the field of training and media support. And our third speaker will be Maria Teresa Ronderos. She is director and co-founder of the Latin American Center for Investigative Journalism. She has coordinated cross-border investigations in the region on issues including migration, corruption, disinformation, and religious organizations. She has been a reporter and editor for several Colombian media outlets and has published her stories in Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and Spain. So before we get started, obviously we are hosted and brought here today by GIJN, the Global Investigative Journalism Network. If you're not familiar with it, it is the largest global network for nonprofit investigative journalism organizations. There are 250 member organizations in 91 countries. It also works with journalists everywhere in nonprofits, in commercial organizations, and also with freelancers. And GIGN has an extensive range of resources and tip sheets to help journalists worldwide, which you can check out on gign.org. And that, again, is also where you can apply for the Digital Threats Fellowship or take a look in the chat for the link to do that. We are very lucky today because we have live interpretation. We're going to be speaking in English, but it's going to be available also with interpretation in French, Russian, and Spanish, and back. So if you would like to use these services, please click on the interpretation button, which is at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and just select the language that you prefer, and you will start to hear the interpretation. And as I mentioned earlier, we want to hear from you. So there is a Q&A box that you can also see in the Zoom menu. So please use that, not the chat. use the Q&A box, and you can submit your questions in writing. These questions will be read out by GIGN's Andrea Arzaba. She will moderate the questions and bring them to the speakers, so you do not have to go on camera. You do not have to read out your question. You can use that Q&A box and submit it. And the last thing for housekeeping is just please note that we are recording this session. It will be posted later on YouTube. Okay, so that's all the information for you. So let's get started. Priyanjana, why don't you kick us off and please go ahead.
Thanks, Craig. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here today. I'm going to share my screen and hope technology works, because what I'm going to do today is predominantly focus on a version of a presentation I recently gave with John Kagan of the markup at NICAR a couple of weeks back, which focuses on who's behind the website, and want to kind of talk at a high level about a bunch of things and then kind of look at a case study in terms of how these tools work. I want to kick it off with just basically saying that a lot of the tools that we've been using for a few years now are either breaking or they no longer exist, or we have to find alternatives to them. Google Cache being one of them. I don't know if everyone over here has noticed, but Google Search or Google Docs in general are less reliable. And by docs, I mean like the search operators you can use, like and or site-specific searches. They just don't work as well as they used to. Facebook's Rectangle is going to be retired on August 14th, about 12 weeks before the US election. So I'm sure everybody's really looking forward to that. Some really useful DNS analytics tools, and we'll talk about what some of these tools are further down. They've been moved to legacy. And through all of that, what you kind of have is more platforms, conversations migrating to, closed channels like Telegram or WhatsApp, which is especially true in Brazil and India. And it's also just easy to conceal identities. I only recently learned that it's really easy to create a company with a false identity and no one will know. So, it's just like, it just makes our work a lot harder. And because of this, it's just really important to think that, actually, this should be the other way around. It's techniques over tools, not tools over technique. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's like there are too many tools that overpromise, they underdeliver, they're expensive. A lot of these tools kind of just literally do contribute to the erosion of privacy. And, it's like, hey, maybe we should be investigating some of these tools and how they get data, not like using them and being underwhelmed by the results they return. Before we kind of just get started, really quickly, every investigation, you're going to have a different threat model. And you need to have like different levels of paranoia for different investigations. Sometimes you just don't want to expose your IP address. If that's the case, use a VPN, but keep in mind that VPNs can also track your activity, and some VPNs are pretty nefarious about selling your data. And you can use Tor, but Tor is really slow, and it can be like some websites are just going to keep giving you captchas if you're trying to look them up through Tor. And then so it's just keep in mind that there are times you're going to want to be more private than other times, and just create your threat model and figure out how to protect yourself online accordingly. If you're in doubt, reach out to somebody who's, a cybersecurity expert or something who'll be able to hold your hand through it. Document everything. I'm not going to go over through all of these points in detail, but it's like, if website investigations are typically not a moment in time, they're over a length of time. So set up monitoring, set up screenshots, get screenshot to timestamps. You might just go for lunch, and by the time you come back, the post has disappeared, the website has disappeared. So just keep taking screenshots and keep archiving everything in real time as you're doing things. When it comes to a website, like broadly, you just kind of want to ask who, why, when, how. And when you're looking at a website, try to answer these questions as you're going through them. Go through all the pages, look at the privacy policies, look to see what the payment options are. Some of this is going to be influence ops. Some of this is just going to be ad farms who want to make money. And they're all going to have like different types of network setup. So to kind of establish the scope of a network, you're going to want to really hone in on why this exists and how it exists. And create a timeline of the website, because what we are seeing recently is a lot of old websites that have not either been renewed or the media organization has died is being swept up by like malicious actors who want to use their history to basically take advantage of all the built-in trust they have. So try to see when things changed and how they changed. And with all of that, let's quickly kind of get into one quick case study, which is something I've been working on and off for a few years now. And every year something new comes up. And the only reason I can monitor it is because lots of archiving and also, honestly, just relying a lot on dumb luck, because you never know when you find something, and sometimes you just don't know what you're looking for. So kind of give you a broad idea of the tools I used to do this investigation and the various types of ways we did it. Like, we looked at domains. We tried to find matching analytics IDs, which websites share the same Google Analytics ID or Facebook Pixel ID or any kind of tracking identifier. We followed the money using a bunch of different, like, open secrets, FEC filing, just like public records, basically. And when we tried to figure out who they were working with and who some of their collaborators or big money partners were, we looked at ad libraries as well as used something called DNSDB flexible search. It all started when the Lansing State Journal broke a story that there were dozens of new websites that appeared in Michigan, but they appeared to have a political bent. And when you looked at their About Us, they said, hey, there are going to be thousands of this eventually. And I was left wondering, are there already thousands? How do I know? And so what I did was I started off by using a simple tool called DNSDB. And what that does is it matches an IP address to a website. Think of the relationship between an IP address and a website as the same as a contact in your phone book. You call up a number, there's a person at the other end. It's the same thing with a domain. You go to google.com, there's an IP address behind that. You go to any random website, there's an IP address behind that. It's a many-to-many relationship. When I plugged in one of the domains that the Lansing State Journal had identified in their investigation, I immediately found about 1,000 results, just using this one tool by plugging in the domain and looking for all the other domains that sit on the same IP address. I then used another tool called Risk IQ to try and find out which domains shared the same analytics ID. This could be Google Analytics, it could be New Relic, and in some cases, I even found that different websites were using different Google Analytics ID, but they were still part of the same network. So what you eventually have to do is keep kind of find domains, find all the digital identifiers you can, and look through each of them one by one. Like, it's kind of like a snowball effect to kind of find the entire range of what you're going to be looking at. More recently, and effectively, like, that's how we kind of had our first story, which is just kind of continuously going through the same thing over and over again. More recently, I saw that one of the entities that they had a new director on it that didn't exist before. And it was somebody called Tim Dunn, who's a West Texas oil and gas billionaire. And I was like, wait, hang on, when did this happen? And how do you even confirm that it's the same Tim Dunn? You know, there could just be somebody else with the same name. Just because you have a name clash doesn't mean the same person. So at that point, you do kind of have to resort to more traditional means of trying to identify, hey, is it the same one? Is it not? And then the other question was, when did he actually get involved in this? And the only reason why I was able to determine that it was new is because through all my previous investigations, I had kept screenshots of this screen to be like, oh, wait, there's a new entry now. Right, okay, so this would have happened sometime in the last 3, 6, 12 months. And this is just one more quick example of another part of this, where one day when I was clicking around their websites, I saw something called Community Newsmaker show up. And I'm like, wait, what is Community Newsmaker and why do I care? And should I care? And I couldn't really find out much about it. The whois details were blank, couldn't really find anything with IP address. I threw it into Twitter search to see what came up. And I found like a Tea Party aligned group that was advertising it. And what I saw was that it was using a subdomain called Interview Desk. And I was like, huh, interesting. I wonder if there are other things on this subdomain that might show me who their collaborators are. And so again, I was just able to put that into DNSDB flexible search. And I eventually effectively found about, I don't know, like a dozen of their collaborators who I wasn't able to find through any other means. And eventually, like this one network, I've written about them extensively at this point now. First story 2019, but almost every year since, a story or two come up just because every now and again, like if you're just continuously monitoring something, new things are happening, new partnerships and collaborations and influence operations are being created. And the only way to identify is to keep an eye on it at all times. I've thrown in some resources here, including Craig's wonderful newsletter, which I read anytime it comes out, I read it. And I've also kind of put our original NICA slides, who's behind the website, as well as the checklist that John Keegan and I have created, which just kind of helps you create a little bit more structure to your investigation, because it's often really easy to go down a rabbit hole and not know how to find your way out. That's about it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Pri. Just a quick follow-up to sort of underline, I mean, you talked specifically about websites, but this approach of kind of monitoring and archiving, I mean, would you say that that applies for whatever kind of platform you might be looking at?
Absolutely. And I think social media platforms, you especially have to screenshot, archive, or even download videos, because everything's really ephemeral and you don't know when things get taken down. And the other thing is, a lot of social media, it's hard to archive on archive.org or archive.is or whatever, which again means that you have to be very, very diligent, because if you're not, then before, like, it's sometimes really hard to find what you found when you found it.
And you mentioned some of the tools that have sort of helped with monitoring are going away, like CrowdTangle, which was amazing for being able to watch Facebook pages and groups and Instagram accounts. So for you, like, what are you doing when you have, when you're monitoring and you're building lists of Facebook pages, like if CrowdTangle is going away, what are you using to just sort of build your lists and keep track of them?
So I am lucky in that I'm in academia, so I get access to the meta content library. However, my experience with the content library so far has been that it's incomplete compared to CrowdTangle, in that not only does it give you far fewer results, but it also doesn't have tools like location-sensitive searches that CrowdTangle used to have. I think the next year is going to be really interesting for all of us as we figure out better ways to run Facebook investigations without access to CrowdTangle. But I feel like it's still very early stages now, and I think we all just kind of blindly relied on CrowdTangle, and most of us hoped that, hey, maybe it'll just survive this year. But in the absence of that, I think there's going to be a lot of creativity, and I really do hope that it's going to be an opportunity for academics, researchers, and journalists to get together and create tool sets so that people aren't repeating each other's efforts, because that's just wasted time for everyone.
And I suppose, if you don't have a specific tool to use, just put the things you're monitoring in a spreadsheet and click on the links, I guess, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pri. So our next speaker is Malik. Malik, please go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. So yeah, I'm going to talk specifically about Tunisia. As all you remember, maybe in 2011, Tunisia faced an uprising that toppled a dictator that had been running the country for 23 years. And it was the start of what we call the Arab Spring. And one of the major player in this uprising, or we call it a revolution, was social media, and specifically Facebook. So it was like a tool used by activists, by people demonstrating in the street, and the dictatorship was completely enabled to stop this from happening, and enabled to control this platforms. Now we are 14 years after this period, and Facebook today is still a major player in the political scene in Tunisia, but at the same time, it became also one of the biggest threats in terms of democracy in the country by all this new group and new companies that are using this platform, especially Facebook, as is the biggest one used in Tunisia, and still they are using this platforms to spread fake news, organizing like campaign against political opponents, and sometimes even defamating specific category or category of person. Recently, the sub-Saharan migrants in Tunisia faced huge campaigns in social media and specifically in Facebook. The first time that we started at least looking to how those behavior are impacting political debate and how they are threatening the ongoing or the democratic process in the country was in 2019 during a very disputed presidential election with a lot of outsiders arriving finalists at the second round of the presidential election. And this period, just few weeks before the election, Facebook shut down 265 accounts, and they just stated that in a very short communique. And most of the pages, or a big part of those pages, was related to one single company, and part of those pages was concerning Tunisia. This information we get it from our friends and partner from DFR Lab, which is a think tank related to the Atlantic Council, that was contacted by Facebook a few hours before shutting down those pages and allowing them to download the content of those pages and document the content and the behavior of those pages. And with collaboration with DFR, we granted access to those documents, and we start to dig on them. Our reaction was at the beginning. We start to see what kind of impact and what is the reach of this kind of pages. So we are talking specifically about 11 pages related directly to the Tunisian election, and we are talking more half a million of followers and more than 7 million of content views. By digging more, using some information about available on the about website page, we discovered that most of those pages was running ads, sponsored content. This content is political satire or sometimes defamating certain candidate, talking about different topics, but heavily sponsored through all those pages. Unfortunately, Facebook don't give us the possibility in Tunisia to go more in detail and see how much all those campaigns are costing, how much money is put in these campaigns. But at least we can know that those pages and what kind of content they are sponsoring and what kind of ad they are running. By doing this analysis of the content, we're trying to see who are the people who are targeted by these pages and what are the main topics related to those pages. And we see that they are targeting mainly all the political scene, the main candidate for the election in 2019, talking about politics, freedom of speech, corruption, poverty, trying to criticize the work of the actual government and so on, and attacking sometimes personally those political figures. But what we discover also that there is one only political person who was completely nobody talked about in these pages, and there is no any content targeting this guy. And even when we find some content targeting him, it was more like positive content. As we see, the pages are sharing positive information about this candidate, Nabil Qarwi, who's owning a very important TV station and also a charity foundation, and targeting all his opponents. So it became more and more clear that those pages are attacking all the opponents of this guy and highlighting his action as a political leader, but also as his TV and his foundations. And what also we have DFR and in communication with Facebook, we discovered that all those pages was connected to one single company, which is our Archimedes Group, which is an Israeli-based company run by ex-Mossad officers who are running an industrial scale a farm of pages, fake pages and fake websites, and involved in many different presidential election worldwide and focusing on Africa. And they are very clear in their presentation. The website was shut down. And I emphasize is the fact that we need to take screenshot for everything and try to archive all our findings, because websites are shut down regularly and sometimes in purpose. So we can, this case of 2019 election was a trigger, like for us in Intifada, to say that we need to start to track this kind of behavior and try to document all these pages that are sharing political content. Unfortunately, as was already said, that social media platform and Facebook especially don't share a lot of information. They are closing all the APIs or make them very expensive for a small media outlet, and even if for research center with whom sometimes we can collaborate, make it very difficult for us to do the job and at least follow this kind of unauthentic behavior or at this kind of fake pages created to create a debate or discussion about a candidate or a political party. So what we start to do is using a very simple spreadsheet and putting all the link of pages, group, following some hashtags, and from there starting to, or at least trying to reconstruct the web around some of the prominent pages that they are supporting or spreading some fake news again on the opponent of the actual president. The actual president was the one who won the election in 2019 against the guy who was running campaigns, unauthentic campaigns against him. Today, he's using another kind of patterns. We discovered it for one specific incident happened last year when the president called for the sub-Saharan African as invaders and gave them like evil plans to attack Tunisia. We discovered that a whole bunch of new pages and a new group was created to at least propagate and promote those ideas, the ideas that promoted by the actual president, but and creating like a big debate and a big conversation around the topic that the president was imposing on the political debate. Those pages are often related by the admins. They are not. They are like few ones managing a bunch of a big number of pages and groups. And to give just an example of how those network working, it starts in general by creating and spreading attacks, fake news, information against a category of political opponent or a category of intermediary bodies as the judiciary system, for example, in January 2022. And a week after that, the president just took all those ideas about the fact that all the judges are corrupt, that the judges need to be stopped in the corruption, and dismiss 54 judges based on this conversation or this debate created fakely by those pages. Those 55 judges, 54 judges Most of them, as we investigate each cases of those judges, most of them was one of these judges who are refusing to accept orders from the presidency and from the Ministry of Justice. They are the ones who are trying to stop this radicalization of the political power in terms of acquiring all the power in the country. So this was like a pattern for us. We see that the campaign starts on those pages and those groups. The debate is installed in the virtual sphere, in Facebook mainly. A few days or a week after that, the president take action in the same direction of what those pages are spreading. The same was done with Sub-Saharan African. The same also was done with political opponent. Most of them are jailed now for more than a year. And it's quite the same pattern that is repeating itself again and again. So just to finish for how we are preparing the coming election, the coming presidential election, which are very important to see how the society will react to 4 years of a dictatorial power. We are starting by doing it with very basic tools, as I said. The access to data from APIs are very restricted. So trying to be ready and taking screenshot, documenting all the interaction, following new tags, and to be ready at least to find some pattern or some behavior that can impact or can influence the next election. I think that's it for the Tunisian case study.
Awesome. Thank you, Malik. Just a quick follow-up. I mean, so obviously you were able to identify this kind of new network for the president. And I'm curious, how did you sort of come to see these groups in these pages as part of, part of a new sort of operation? What were you sort of doing to be able to find them in the first place?
Yeah, it's a very low-key method. It's being on the social media, following all the new tags that they can be used as "we are all with the president is our leader" or something like that, and follow the tags and see what other pages are using the same tags. In general, there is pattern on how they are using phrases, commands, or sometimes even some GIF or photos that they and by following that, every time we would discover the new page, we took the link, we tried to take some screenshots and so on, and the list is becoming bigger and bigger by connecting the dots like this way.
That's great. Yeah, and I mean, thank you very much. With Pri's presentation, she talked about some of the technical methods where you can connect websites and things together. And with Malik, he's talking about content, about hashtags, about the topics. And so these are, some of the options you have to be watching and monitoring to sort of build things together. And at the end of the day, you end up with a big spreadsheet like Malik just showed. And, that's what you're building and watching over time. It's also interesting to see the interplay between the digital campaign and then the rollout by the government of the related sort of policy and discussion as well. And that sort of brings us to Maria Teresa and your presentation. So Maria, please take it away, and the floor is yours.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would like to share with you, it's a big project we did last year, which was called Digital Mercenaries. And as you can see, I left the whole list of people. I'm not going to read it, but it was media from all over Latin America, but also some digital labs like the DFR Lab 2, like Laboratorio Ciudadano from Honduras, and other laboratories that are investigating inauthentic behavior. So I'm just going to explain how we did the investigation, because this was many people investigating. So I'm not going to go into the detail, but what I wanted to show you, how we did on the digital side, and at the same time we did on the reporting traditional side. So on the digital side, we started by analyzing all the public data on reports of inauthentic coordinated behavior, like, for example, from Facebook, from the reports by Oxford, by Stanford. We took all of this data and we analyzed it and started to find names of companies, patterns in different countries, so we can follow them. Also, because we worked with a lot of fact checkers, their day-to-day work is to look at, they can spot suspicious activities very easily, because that's the day-to-day work, as they are fact-checking phony information. So they brought all their knowledge into the investigation, and they had already spotted a lot of suspicious activities. What we were looking was who is behind a very vicious kind of political campaign against a lot of either public officials or government officials, or to defend government officials. We wanted to unearth who were the big players behind. We had the feeling that it was a few companies, that it wasn't going to be lots of people. We also, of course, used the social listening tools that we've already mentioned, like CrowdTangle, Medwater, and Brand24. And we also researched the digital footprint, IP addresses, Google Analytic codes, domain registrations. And then from all of these, we've basically, if we did all these big spreadsheets, database, and we identified the companies and persons in several countries, and we realized we had an actual physical meeting of all these people, and it was very exciting when we had all of these, everybody sort of shared what they had found, and then we started to find the same companies in different countries. And then we found that there was actually a lot of companies working in the same places. At the same time, we attended 2 political congresses of political consultants and election gurus, because they are amazingly open. They talk a lot. So they were actually saying how they did this, and they admitted publicly to a lot of irregular behavior or bypassing laws, and so we did that, and we also visited their courses. They have courses online, and we downloaded a lot of their talks and analyzed them, and also looked for their names connected to companies. The difficulty we had is that we had these political consultants or consultancy firms almost confessing what they were doing, and we had all the information about the inauthentic behavior, but it was very difficult to connect one with the other. And that's how we started to follow the companies on the one side, and then the what they said on the other. We interviewed real-world people who are working for elections, and that was key. We found some deep throats that were disgruntled because they had been mistreated or something like that in a campaign, especially people who worked for big, these centers where they hire lots of people to do this. And they talked, a lot of them, especially in Honduras. We had a very good deep throat that sort of explained how the whole system worked. And then we did traditional reporting on people behind the companies, their trajectories. We found a lot of information. And from that, we found these basic things. One of the tools we used was Clip's Nina. It's a new tool that we developed in Clip, which is, it actually, when you looked at a company there, it will give you results of a lot of public contracting all over Latin America, because we have uploaded and crossed a lot of the Latin American contracting companies. So I just wanted to share with you some of the keys that may help you also investigate. So investigating in parallel the digital world and the real world really helps a lot. Talk with disgruntled employees of these call centers and trolling centers. A lot of them get fights and they just leave and they want to talk. Find the beneficial owners of some of these companies that you go down to. You can find them in their financial records or in their filings to their local registries or to the FCC or to the SEC or whatever it is. Public procurement contracts is a great source to find who pays for this information. We found a lot of public procurement contracts with companies that were part of this disinformation sort of ecosystem. Follow lives of people. Lying is a constant in their lives. We found, for example, two guys, Gobalek and Serimedo, both of some of these companies that were working in several countries. And when we dug their lives, that like if they had any judicial proceedings against them or anything, we found, they had all kinds of problems in their whole life. Pay attention to the ads on Facebook. Sometimes these ads offer phone addresses, domains, and other valuable information. And also you can see how much money they paid on the Google and on the Facebook ads, and then see how much they declared officially in their campaign. And you see sometimes it's completely not, it doesn't match. Political, as we say, political advisors talk a lot, too much. So sometimes even talking to them, one of our reporters just approached them in one of these congresses and talked to them, and they were very open about what they do. Link traditional reporting to digital reporting. Now, the findings also give you an idea where to look. We found 7 companies distributing massive political disinformation in favor of their clients. Some of them were candidates and some of them were governments. We found the same accounts, for example, promoting, and that's how we found Gobalek's company. Some of them, same accounts, promoting a candidate in Panama and promoting governmental candidates in Venezuela. So we could see there were fake fake accounts or paid accounts. We also found hundreds of fake pages created to promote a party in Mexico by another company called Neurona, which was also working in several countries. We found, we also did some analysis of speech and narratives, and we found identical narratives, and this was more traditional reporting of right-wing candidates. It was almost by the book of what was the narrative of this foundation created by Vox, the Spanish party in Spain, and they had all right-wing, same thing, like erasing past history, alleging fraud, election fraud. Americans know a little bit about that, exaggerating violence and spreading fear. Influential, disinformers in several countries. Serimedo, for example, we find him in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. Eustáquio was in Brazil and was being prosecuted for disinformation in Brazil, and he moved to Paraguay to support another candidate who actually won. And Eduardo Bolsonaro, the son of the president, was all over. We counted 120-something visits in Latin America, and he had also set up companies in the US, selling merchandise basically for disinformation. A lot of private consultants paid by public funds promoting disinformation on the personal image of public officials. So we found in Colombia this guy who was hired by public officials with public money to inflate their image and make them look good. Also lying a lot. And we also found party funds finance disinformation. It was a very big story in Costa Rica that the team in Costa Rica broke, which was this company in the contracts of because these are public contracts of political consultants for the campaign of the actual president of Costa Rica. they said, we're going to hire this guy for left-hand operations. And when we asked for left-hand operations, everybody said, oh, that was basically disinformation. So they even put it on writing. We found public service app used to gather data for voters in Venezuela. We found resurrected profiles that had been eliminated by Twitter or Facebook, had been taken down, but they reappeared even with the same names, but sometimes with different names in Nicaragua. We found the Supreme Court of Nicaragua distributing this information, and also even Russian disinformation in Bolivia to improve the image of mining companies, but very tied to a candidate that probably they thought would approve their bidding for to manage some lithium production mines in Bolivia. So that's more or less the kinds of things we found, and the kinds of things that probably will give you an idea of where to look.
Amazing. Thank you. I mean, I really encourage everyone to check out this project. There is so many stories, so much work that was done, and you can see lots of different approaches and sort of a playbook for looking at these kinds of paid influence operations. So Maria Teresa, I'm going to ask you a follow-up, but I also want Pri and Malik to prepare. I'm going to put a question to all of you after, which is, what are you kind of looking for in terms of sort of new trends around digital threats and manipulation, the things you might be watching for this year in different elections? So Pri and Malik, and also Maria Teresa, I'll come back to you after for that, but just want to get everybody thinking about that question. And for you, Maria Teresa, I mean, this was obviously a very big partnership and collaboration. And so if any of the folks here are thinking about how do they put together a partnership, how might they sort of do a collaboration, I'm wondering, as an organization that does these as a core part of what you do, like what would you give us some advice for people who want to try and find partners to do a larger scale investigation like this?
Well, I think the advice is to get together, of course, have the will to do it, think about a lot of this work is transnational. I was looking at what Malek was showing, and he shows Archimedes, and there's a lot of work that our colleagues in Salvador have done about Archimedes too, and their work, because these are transnational companies doing work everywhere. So it's worth doing it because you can find the bigger players, and I think it's good. The other thing that what we do is we do a kind of put together all the knowledge. Everybody, you have to be super collaborative and super open. So people really have to trust each other and say, we're going to do this together, and we just put on the table everything we know. And then what we do is we clarify very clear rules of the game. So there's no confusion that we're going to be like radical sharing. We're going to be publishing all together, either in different dates or in the dates we all agree. If somebody needs to publish before because there's a political circumstance that forces them to publish, then they have to be open about it. If you have very clear rules, you can really work together. And also my advice is bring on some experts. By experts, I mean, on the one hand, fact checkers, because they are on this world all day looking at what's happening. Of course, political reporters that have been covering politics and they have access to campaigns, to elections, and not just the digital world, but the real world. And the last thing, I think, people who have some forensic digital investigation sort of expertise. That would be my advice.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, so Pri, I'm going to put you on the spot now. What are you thinking about as, emerging threats or things that you would be paying attention to this year when it comes to elections?
I think two things specifically come to mind. One is, this isn't really new, but it's kind of happening again, where new websites come up that adopt the aesthetics of existing legitimate websites. And it's being able to actively monitor when those come up, how those come up, and then try to trace what those networks are like. And the other thing is new like sites or whatever that come up that specific groups of candidates end up promoting, because usually when you find one or two of those, it's not just one or two.
Great, thank you. Malik, for you, I mean, what are you thinking about in terms of emerging threats and things that you're paying attention to closely this year? Oh, you got to unmute.
Sorry. I think one of the trends for this year, as I see it in Tunisia, as Facebook was really looking for an authentic behavior, shutting down a lot of pages, he also shut down another agency in Tunisia called Your Reputation, working on farming more than 400 pages in Tunisia. I think now that the new method is more grassroots movement, is more like individuals, political affiliate or political supporters, and they are creating this unauthentic behavior, but in a very low key, with very low key method, in a way, creating physical group of people creating content and spreading it. This is, I think, one of the specific to Tunisia. I don't know elsewhere. I think the AI generated audios and videos will be one of the big challenges for all the journalists in the coming elections, especially audios. Now, then, for example, when we can buy blue badges in Facebook or in Twitter and create fake authentic account. We had an example in Tunisia with like some audio leaks spread by a fake certified account. It will be, I think, also one of the major challenge in the coming elections.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm going to mention it at the end of the webinar, but there is an upcoming webinar from GIJN about dealing with, AI and synthetic generated content. I think that's something everybody is looking for. Maria Teresa, what's on your radar in terms of elections this year and things you folks are watching for?
Yes, we are getting together more or less the same team. I don't know if that big, because obviously it's going to be only those who have elections this year, like República Dominicana and Panama and Brazil and Mexico. But what we want to do, we have a big challenge because TikTok has become huge in Latin America, and a lot of the disinformation is going through that, and it's not so easy to investigate and to track. So that's one of the big challenges we have together, but we're going to be looking at that. And particularly our Brazilian colleagues are looking at also voice fakes with artificial intelligence. And we are also looking at a couple of countries where there are very massive campaigns that are not in elections, but you can see a very strong campaign going on. One is Argentina, basically supporting the new president. But the other one, which is very terrible in Peru, which is against a journalist, is basically a massive campaign against one single outlet and one single journalist. And so we want to really dig up, of course, with our colleagues there and try to find those patterns there. That's more or less what we're looking at, yeah.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think that also raises the point that we're talking about elections here today. But of course, these kinds of campaigns and operations, they run them all year round. Sometimes things are stood up and are a little more intense around elections, but the companies that do this are looking for business all year round, and the parties and the supporters are also looking to keep people engaged as well. So you don't want to only turn it on during an election, but be watching and seeing the existing operations and how they adapt. So we're going to go in a moment to take the questions from you folks who've been watching. So please, if you have a question, now is the time to put it in the Q&A box. And I'm going to throw one more out to our panel, which is that we've talked a lot about public-facing content, websites, social media platforms like Facebook and TikTok. Private messaging is obviously a big factor in many countries around the world when we talk about WhatsApp and things like that. And so I just would love to hear, from any or all of you in terms of, your thinking around trying to investigate what are often very, difficult, more closed platforms like, say, WhatsApp. And Pri, I know you've looked at this a little bit, so maybe I can start with you and throw it to you first and just see what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so I had worked on WhatsApp in the context of the Indian elections in 2019, so it's been a while. But it was effectively trying to join a lot of WhatsApp groups. So I think I joined over 1,000 politically aligned WhatsApp groups in India to try to monitor the activity and see what was going on. But doing any of this stuff technologically is really, really cumbersome. And even like from what I hear, the philosophy on WhatsApp investigations have fundamentally changed now, in that these public groups and things just don't get the same kind of traction. Things are becoming a lot more localized. So you almost have to find local groups to join, or even, and there are folks in the US who are doing this, even effectively request people to donate their data so that you can analyze them in near real time. I think closed groups and finding the, sifting through the signal and the noise in closed groups is really hard, especially if they're like chat apps, because there's so much colloquialism, there's so much just random stuff. And in the middle of that, you suddenly have like a Google Doc which has instructions on how to run an influence campaign today. So it's very much involved, and you take like hours to find two things that are interesting.
Maria Teresa, Malik, do either of you want to weigh in on sort of the more private messaging platforms?
I think it's super difficult in any case. It's so we also, when we've done things like that, it's more going one by one, getting into the groups. I think Brazilians have developed some kind of libraries of groups that to watch for, but these are very fluid. It changes a lot. It's time consuming and slow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there is no other solution than do it by getting, join different group. I think also you can see some of the pages or groups on Facebook can share or can put the WhatsApp group or WhatsApp number on the pages, can be a good a link to follow, and yeah, follow all the groups and join all the suggestions for joining new groups and so on.
Great. Well,
just Greg, do it in a separate phone, because it can be a nightmare.
We did, we found something very useful was when we were tracking migrants, because, WhatsApp groups have become huge to push migrants to offer services and sometimes terrible things to people, pushing them to leave their countries. It's easy to go to the US, all of these things. And then that's a little bit easier because they advertise it so much that you can come in as any other migrant, so you can get into those groups and sort of see what they're talking about.
Quickly add to what
go ahead.
I was just going to quickly add to what Malik had said, which is please use a different phone, because of the number of WhatsApp groups I had joined, I think there were many admins, and I kind of said that I'm at the South Center, etc. But I think many admins reported me, so I literally got kicked out of WhatsApp on like 3 or 4 numbers, because they're like, yep, too much activity or too many people reporting you. So just don't use your personal number for that.
Yes, and I think we do have a couple questions related to digital security as well in the Q&A, but you definitely need to think about that. And in Pri's presentation, she talked a little bit about, VPNs, but if you are joining in Telegram, in WhatsApp, and those kinds of things, your phone number is viewable and available in most cases to the people running those groups. And so you need to think about that and, talk with your newsroom and colleagues about whether you can have a phone and a designated number for joining these things. So thank you for the presentations and for our initial kind of discussion here. I'm going to now pass it to Andrea Arzaba from GIJN. We've got a bunch of questions that have come in from our viewers and the audience here. And so she's going to now throw some of those at our panel as well. So thank you, everybody, for submitting those. And there's still time to get some in if you want to as well.
Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you, Brianna, Maria Teresa, and Malek for the wonderful presentations. And I'm going to read some questions. I'm going to read 3 by 3. And I would also love to invite Craig to answer them since, you also have a lot of experience and a lot to share for our audience. So I'm going to start with tips and tools. So people are asking, archiving is important, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to archive social media posts. Even paid tools fail quite often. Can you share any tips, techniques, or tools? So that would be the first question. The second question, what tools do you recommend for social media monitoring, especially now that TweetDeck, CrowdTangle, and other tools are disappearing? So I'm not sure if you have any comment on that. And the third question is, have you also found open source tools that can fact check AI generated videos and pictures? So that's the first round of 3 questions. I'm gonna ask maybe Brianna, if you could answer.
I can try. So for archiving social media, I think what I've ended up relying a lot more on is screenshots with proper timestamps, because I mean, what you end up also having with Internet Archive and things is that sometimes things you've archived disappear either because of requests from somebody or copyright claims or whatever. So screenshot everything, download videos, maintain the original timestamps of things. But yeah, unfortunately, there aren't any good answers here. Archive.is or PH works sometimes, but it's all a little bit sporadic. And it also depends on whether you're archiving things for retrospective analysis or whether you're archiving them for public viewing. And I think tools for monitoring social media, I think I'm resorting a lot more to computational techniques right now because I think people are still trying to figure out what the tools are and what tools are available to them. And lastly, on AI generated content, the folks at We Verify have created a toolkit which is pretty good, but it's still relatively new. It doesn't do all the models, and I think the one thing that's worth highlighting is AI generated, like any tools for AI generated content detection. None of them are going to be 100% foolproof. You're always going to have a margin of errors. It's just worth being cognizant of that.
Thank you so much. Maria Teresa, would you like to continue?
I think I will pass on this one. I think that the actual specifics about the tools, I'm not so familiarized with those.
Thank you.
Malik?
Yeah, for social media, really, I don't know. Things are changing every time. Facebook shutting down applications that allow to screenshot pages. For a web page, archive.org can be a solution if you create your own archive, putting the link and create an archive. So I think it's more relevant to do it this way. And you can also always use your print function from your browser and use print to PDF. You will printing a whole web page on a PDF. It can serve. For social media, we do it manually, generally, and starting every week, for example, copy pasting the content, taking screenshot for the publication, and building our data set this way. This is the most effective but very time-consuming way to do it. But if there is any tools, I will be also taking that.
I just wanted to say something. I just remember one. I don't know if it's useful, but for example, Hunchly is a very good tool to do archiving of the pages, I think, and you can annotate and all of this is super good. The other one that we used is Meltwater to investigate Facebook. It really allows you to filter information by dates, by countries, and really find patterns. So that one is expensive, but it's super good. those two that I just remember.
Thank you, Malik and Maria Teresa. And now we go with Craig.
Yeah, so I just dropped in the chat. I did my most recent edition of my newsletter. I looked at some approaches around using AI, pardon me, in investigations, and I do have a section where I list some of the detection tools that are out there. But I want to emphasize what Pri said, which is that you can't rely on these 100%. Like, you should not be writing a story saying, oh, this is, a deepfake video or a deepfake audio because of the score of one of these tools. It's just an indicator. It's another signal that you can take into account. And I would encourage you to, reach out to the companies or people behind these detection tools to see if they can assist you with, more involved investigation on that. So on that front, I think your core verification techniques are still really important. Where was this video shot? And, where is this audio recorded from? Did anybody hear it? Was anybody else there? Fundamental verification approaches are still really important around AI. And when it comes to archiving, yeah, it's just, look, there is no perfect social media archiving tool. Some will work, some won't on a given time. You need to think about making sure you have a good personal archive with your own screenshots. If you can afford a tool like Hunchly, it's very good for creating archives. It also puts a hash on every screenshot you take, which would actually stand up in court or other areas like that to show, like, yes, this is an authentic representation of it, but screenshots on a most basic level will work. And just the last, on monitoring, I really encourage you to do the old school method of build spreadsheets, create lists. That will not go away. And the more that you are involved in the manual work of this, the more you can think about it and connect the dots. And just the last little link I'll drop in is, I think people don't often get the most out of the Wayback Machine, archive.org. They have a wonderful browser extension that you should install and use, and you should make sure that you are also creating an account there so that all of your archive pages are stored in one place for you. So that's, that other link in there sort of walks you through using the great Chrome browser extension that they have.
Thank you so much, Craig. Then we're going to go to security because that was a big concern. So I'm going to ask everyone if you could share, what digital safety steps do you take to protect yourselves? What did you take to do the investigations you talked about? And, just anything related to digital security that you can share. Now I'm going to go back. So the last person was Craig. So could you be the first one?
Sure. And I will defer to some of the other folks on this. I mean, I think, you need to be using a good VPN. Be very wary of free VPNs. They're often hoovering up your data in very insecure ways. And so if you're going to pay money for something, you should really think about a good quality VPN and keep it running as you're doing your investigations. You would be surprised how easily it is for someone to actually fingerprint your particular signature of your IP address, the computer you use, the browser you use, all of that. So if you are particularly working in very sensitive or authoritarian environments, you need to be thinking about this. I would also do a very basic thing, which is, sort of Google your own name, Google your own address, Google your own personal details, see how much is out there that people could find if they wanted to target you, and do the best you can to limit your personally identifiable details. Hide your friends on Facebook publicly. Maybe you want to have a private Instagram account. Think about also, the attacks that could come through your family members. Maybe don't link publicly to your spouses, your partners. These kinds of things, if they can't get at you, they're going to go through and pivot through a family member or someone close to you. So just thinking about, searching and seeing what's available out there and doing your best to minimize the amount of information you're sharing about sensitive things like location, family members, your activities. I wouldn't be, sharing where you are at any given moment. These are all just, good practices, I'd say.
Thank you, Craig. Malik?
In addition to Greg, it will be difficult, but yeah, I will also recommend to double authenticate all your accesses, even to your Facebook pages, your social media account and your sensitive as your email account or your website or your access to the profile to the website of your organization, for example. Yeah, I think have also a very low print on social media in general and on internet. Try to be the most invisible possible, disconnecting your personal life from your journalist life. It's very important, and also don't put yourself. Don't talk about your work. Don't talk about your about what you are doing, what you are investigating, which group are you looking at. So be very careful. I remember when we were preparing the webinar, Greg said if there is some information that you can say about 2014, it's okay, because I will not say exactly what I'm going to do, and it's important to not publicize it.
Thank you, Malik. Maria Teresa?
Yes, what we did in that big thing, because we were a bit worried because it was going to be so big, we created a committee, a security committee, and sort of drafted a protocol so we would know how to respond in case of an attack or in case somebody was being, all the heat would go against a person or a group. So we had like a way of monitoring if activity was going, off the charts or something against one of the websites. We also looked at the websites would be the most secure they were, all of the websites of the team. The other thing we use a lot is encryption. We do have, VeraCrypt or one of these encryption things that are easy to use, and you put your really sensitive work there, and also copy it, because you might have lots of work and then something happens and then you lose everything. So keep backups, even if it's on a separate unit. And the other thing that's very easy, but I found that's very useful, is update your phone, your software of your phone. So a lot of these malware they put in your thing, like Pegasus and things, the updates of the software will protect you. So don't leave it's healthy to turn your phone off and put it on in the morning so it would update itself all the time. Yeah, that's more or less what some of the basic things we do, and basically be ready if there's an attack, or there's really unusual activity against you. You have to be aware of what you should do next. What would be the kinds of things how would you respond to that? Have that clarity when you're okay, not when you're in the middle of the crisis.
Thank you so much, Maria Teresa. Priyanjana?
Hi, so to kind of build upon one of the things that Craig said about, Googling yourself or making sure you're not exposing too many PIIs, the New York Times has a really handy guide called How to Dox Yourself. And it's worth doing that just to kind of see, because you don't know where your information's leaked. You don't know what data brokers have in you. You don't know what's gone where. So it's worth kind of just going through all the steps, or even kind of doing it as an executive colleague where you guys dox each other just to see what's out there about you. Different investigations have different threat models. So I think it's, you have different levels of paranoia at every point. But the one thing I would say is that don't use your primary browser, especially not like Chrome where you're signed into Google or something. When you're running investigation, just have like a clean, almost sandboxed browser, like maybe a completely different browser or something where you're doing that. It's also worth noting that if you have like ad blockers and stuff on your primary browser, sometimes you might want to kind of, for things you're investigating, like have the real experience, which is going to be a truly awful experience. But it's worth kind of having a secluded space to do that, where it's not intermingling with with anything that's personal.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to ask the last question, because unfortunately, we're running out of time. So just very briefly, what open databases do you recommend when investigating cyber threats in an election context? Not sure if you can share some of the databases that you have used. And I'm going to start once again. Now I'm going to go back. So please, Priya and Jana, if you could share.
Sure. So open corporates is obviously the big one, the easy one. I don't know if you'll know this, but open corporates, you can even search by address. And if you can do that, you can find the other companies that might be related or the shell companies or whatever. Anything campaign finance related, for anything you want to do around digital forensics or DNS, there are a handful of tools. DNSlytics is parts of it are free, parts of it are paid. Security Trails is free, but you have to have an account. Hooksy, which gives you historic Whois data, that is free. Sorry, that's just off the top of my head.
No, that is great. Thank you so much, Maria Teresa.
Well, you can use, for example, the registries in the different countries. These are usually open. Also, some of the legal, if people have a legal record, there's also PACER in the US, but in the rest of the world, there are local, open databases of, courts or that kind of thing. I think that's more or less what I'm thinking. Of course, we use Nina a lot, and also the OCCRP Aleph is really good to track people and to track companies. Also, some of the operations databases, like for web domains or the Facebook ads, the Google ads, these are very good. They give you lots of addresses and things, and they're also open.
Thank you, Maria Teresa. Before I go to Malek, someone asked if Nina is a public repository. Like if you could.
Not yet. We are developing it, but if they write to Clip, we will give them access. It's for Latin America only. But yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Malek?
Yeah, I will cite Open Corporate. I think it's an important OCCRP database, but also ICIJ as we are partner also, and we work a lot in a lot of those leagues. And in general, it also can allow us to find connection between political bodies or personalities and businessmen. It was efficient. I will also check into WikiLeaks cables and WikiLeaks document in general. There is a lot of information on political actors, people maybe who was completely on the background of the story, but they are important today, and you can find a lot of information there. So yeah, that's it. Mainly those public databases.
Thank you, Malek. Craig?
Yeah, lots of great ones there. I would remind people that archive.org is not just for archiving your own stuff, but you can search through that archive. So keep that in mind as an option. There are also some Telegram directories out there. So if you're trying to find Telegram channels, TGStat is one that's pretty helpful. And I did earlier share a link to the Meta ad library where you can search through ads on TikTok and Facebook. I just dropped a link into the Google ad library, and there is also a TikTok ad library. So these can be really helpful for you as well when you're looking into things. And if you want to go really deep on the ad side of stuff, there's a website called wellknown.dev, which aggregates advertising data about websites. I can't really go into details on how you might use it now, but but that's a helpful one. And I think just the last one I'll mention is there's a great collection of tools on Intel Techniques, where if you are trying to do some searches on social networks, or if you have trying to do username searches, email searches, phone number searches, some of this data is a little more biased towards US numbers and data. So keep that in mind, but there's often some decent international results that you can get as well.
Bellingcat also has pretty amazing tools and techniques in their page.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria Teresa. Thank you, Craig. And before I I asked Craig to close the webinar. I just want to invite once again everyone watching this webinar to apply to our digital investigations course, where you will learn, you will have more time to develop this kind of knowledge and to know more about how to better investigate digital threats. I just shared the link in the chat, and please, Craig, go ahead. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, I think this was a really great webinar. I'm grateful to GIGN and to our speakers today. And, you know, as I'm closing things, folks, the webinar is going to end. So if you're trying to grab some links that have been shared in the chat, now is the time to go in there and copy and paste those, because this was recorded, so you can sort of, you know, watch the video again. But if you're trying to grab the tools and links that have been shared there, now is the time to do that, because we have run out of time. So GIGN, as I mentioned earlier, they have a second webinar coming up. It's about, you know, focusing on how to identify and investigate AI audio deepfakes. I know I get a lot of questions from people about AI audio deepfakes. This is something that's spreading in a lot of countries. So this is going to be held on April 9th. At 9 a.m. Eastern, so same start time as today. And the link has been shared multiple times in the chat box. It's in there. Sign up. This is a free webinar. And I really want to thank the Global Investigative Journalism Network and all of you for coming in today, for asking some great questions. And a huge thank you to our speakers, Pri, Malik, and Maria Teresa. And so keep an eye on GIJN's Twitter feed at GIJN and its website for details on future events. And that's also where you can go to apply to be part of our digital threats cohort. So that's it. We're going to say thank you and goodbye. And hopefully you grabbed all the links you needed, because we are ending the webinar now. So thanks, everybody.